when the invisible God became visible. This is not just another love story. This is love himself. Bernice Tall-Farrell here. Welcome back to the Psalm 42 Gathering Place. And I am beyond excited to continue this journey through the book of Ruth. Over the last few sessions, we've watched Ruth move from survival through God's gleaning laws to favor at the table of Boaz. At first, Ruth entered the field simply hoping to gather enough food for the day. She gleaned according to the laws established by an invisible God. Laws created to provide for the poor, the widow, the foreigner, the vulnerable just like her. But then the story began shifting, and provision moved from leftovers in the field to personal giving from the owner's own hand. Ruth went from surviving at the edges to sitting at Boaz's table, eating until full and receiving directly from his hand. And now tonight, the story deepens even further because Ruth chapter 2 verses 17 and 18 says, quote unquote, "So she gleaned in the field until evening and beat out what she had gleaned. And it was about an ephah of barley. And then she took it and went into the city." Whew. Now, don't miss this. An ephah of barley was enough to feed a person for approximately 10 days or more. Ruth entered the field hoping to simply survive for the day, but she returns carrying overflow. This is no longer merely surviving. This is visible abundance. This is overflow. And Naomi immediately recognizes something unusual has happened because scripture says, quote unquote, "And her mother-in-law said to her, 'Where have you gleaned today? Blessed be the one who took notice of you.'" Now, Naomi could see something unusual had happened before Ruth ever said anything. And honestly, that's deep symbolically too, because sometimes favor becomes recognizable through fruit, outcome, the overflow, unexpected abundance. And then Ruth reveals the source and says, "The man's name with whom I've worked today is Boaz." Naomi responds, "Blessed be he of the Lord, who has not forsaken his kindness to the living and the dead." Whew. Now catch this. Naomi does not merely recognize Boaz's kindness. She recognizes the kindness of God being revealed through Boaz. My God. And that's where the deeper revelation hidden in the field begins unfolding. Because before Christ was ever born in Bethlehem, the invisible God was already making himself visible through provision, kindness, covenant, generosity, protection, honorable human vessels in the field of Boaz, in the town, you guessed it, of Bethlehem. Whew. God may have become physically visible in the flesh through the birth of Christ, the baby laid in the manger in Bethlehem, but long before Bethlehem became known for the birth of Christ, God was already revealing himself to his people there in very visible ways. Strong truth. Ruth may have first heard about this invisible God through Naomi, but in the field of Boaz, she experienced him for herself. Come on, somebody. She moves from hearing about God to experiencing his nature, my Lord. And this is why Ruth is such a powerful story. Because throughout the narrative, God remains invisible, yet his nature keeps becoming visible everywhere. Through covenant systems, provision, honorable action, favor, redemption, mercy towards outsiders. And honestly, if you look at scripture deeply enough, he's there in types and shadows. God is a type and Boaz is a type and shadow of Christ. Not Jesus himself, but the image of his nature. Whew. Because Boaz welcomed the outsider. Christ welcomes the outsider. Boaz provides redemption and covering for the outsider. Christ provides redemption and covering. Boaz protects dignity. Christ restores dignity. Boaz creates belonging, and Christ brings reconciliation and belonging. Boaz reflects God's nature through human action, which means Ruth is experiencing mercy, provision, dignity, redemption, covenant kindness through a visible human vessel reflecting the divine character of God. This is not just another love story. This is love himself, pursuing, providing, protecting, preserving dignity, welcoming the outsider, creating belonging, standing in the gap, revealing himself through covenant kindness. This is everything Christ died for us to receive. Not merely religion, a ritual, just information, church attendance, but restored relationship, covenant, belonging, reconciliation, dignity restored, access to the Father, and transformation into the likeness of his image and likeness. And this is why Ruth hits so deeply, because underneath the field, underneath the table, underneath the favor, the story is carrying the heart of God towards humanity. The outsider is being welcomed, the vulnerable is being protected, and the hungry is being filled. The displaced finding belonging, and the unseen being noticed. The ashamed being preserved with dignity. Boaz is functioning as a visible reflection of covenant love and redemptive nature, but he is still only the vessel. And here's the deeper revelation. People can be involved in the covenant without being the foundation of it. My God. Because if people build their faith entirely upon the vessels, the personalities, the leaders, the human behavior, human consistency, their faith becomes fragile. Not because vessels don't matter. They absolutely do. God uses people, relationships, mentors, spiritual mothers and fathers, teachers, covenants, connections. But vessels are still human, which means humans can fail, misunderstand, disappoint, leave, fall short, become inconsistent. But the covenant foundation itself remains eternal. And maybe that's what this story is ultimately trying to reveal. God has been clearly visible right in the midst of our lives. But many times our natural human inclination is to focus on people and things. And it causes us to miss the very presence of the Creator working through it all. God is always revealing himself to his people in very visible ways. And maybe that is what it means to delight in the Lord. Because Boaz gives us a beautiful example of what delight looks like. He moves from doing what's merely required by law to doing what was desired by the heart of God. My God. And what was the heart of God? To provide, protect, preserve dignity, welcome the outsider, create belonging, and reveal covenant kindness toward people created in his image and likeness. And maybe that's the deeper hidden revelation underneath the entire story. This is not just another love story. This is destiny unfolding in human relationships. This is the invisible God revealing himself through visible vessels. This is the covenant unfolding through human interaction. This is image and likeness becoming visible in the earth. And maybe that is the deep calling unto the deep. This is not just another love story. I'll see you next time, right here on the Psalm 42 Gathering Place. God bless you.